introducing himself and telling us a bit about his books?
I don't know whether I'm best placed to describe my books, to be honest, because I think that they're absolutely marvellous, but the sales figures wouldn't seem to concur. But suffice to say that I write quite dark, grimy psychological fiction, police procedurals, set largely in Hull and East Yorkshire. I occasionally venture out of that area to write other standalone thrillers to lesser and greater extent. I've been a full-time novelist for about 10 years now, and massively impoverished for about 5. So just plodding on, really. I've got a new one out today, or at least it's new to you. It's old hat to me. That's called Darkness Falls, and that's the prequel to the McAvoy series. And if you know me for anything, chances are you know me for the McAvoy series, because that's the one that actually sells. And I've been doing that for a goodly while now. I keep selling the TV rights and being fated as the next big thing, and then the producers bugger off or die, and I'm left going, hello, remember me? So at present, I'm just a twat in a cardigan who writes books, and I hope you like listening to me talk.
It's a very good introduction.
Thanks. It's honest, if nothing else.
So I've got a big list of questions from Sam, right?
Okay.
She starts off with, did your time as a journalist help you to have such a fine eye for detail in your writing, or have you always had an eye for detail?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I think I have eye for the particular type of detail. I mean, I became a journalist at 17, and you kind of are always on the lookout for things that are interesting or remarkable or noteworthy, and they're still the same things that I try and punctuate my books with. So I notice things like that. If somebody talks with their hands, or if there's a particularly interesting gargoyle on a doorway as you walk in, or there's a smell that really, you could smell that and know exactly where it was. I kind of file those things away in my, idiosyncrasy library, my cabinet of curiosities. But by the same token, I can completely miss reality as well. I only pick up the things that are useful for relaying to others. But yeah, I mean, I could literally go and pick the kids up from school and return without them because my brain's gone off somewhere else. So it kind of depends on what your eye for detail focuses on. But I'm quite lucky in that that's kind of what my brain is for. You know what I mean? But I'm pleased she's noticed that. I'm always basically, flattery is the way to my heart. Anybody who wants to say lovely things about me, it's always very welcome. I don't know what to do with it. I go all squirmy and weird, but it's still nice to hear.
She says, congratulations on publication day.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. The days of my big London launches are long since gone. It's strange when you're a debut author and you're being feted as the next big thing, and there's all these there's champagne and balloons, and they book a club somewhere in Soho, and the celebrities. And by the time you reach, in my case, I think it's book 15, you're lucky if they remember. And occasionally one of your kids will, refrain from kicking you in the knee for about 20 minutes. But that's not me being bitter. It's just really interesting to have that span of how your life has gone from one way to another. But yeah, it's certainly nice, especially given that this particular book, was quite an important part in the whole being an author journey thing. So to finally see it out there in the world many, many years after first writing it, it's quite a strange feeling.
I'm going to read you another comment from Sam. She says she's gutted that she can't be here right now.
Well, I'm sure she can watch again. And to be honest, pay me a few quid and I will literally ring you up and talk to you for as long as you want. So if she wants something for Christmas and it's just an hour with David Mark, we can talk turkey, definitely.
We'll make it work, yeah.
Yeah.
She says, what was your path to publication? How did you become a writer?
Oh God. Should we extend the program by 3 or 4 hours? Essentially, I'll really condense it. all I ever wanted to be was an author. All I've ever been good at is writing. And I didn't know how to become one because I'm from, kind of a working class lad from Carlisle. I just knew that I loved words and I loved splashing about in them. So when I was 17 and didn't know what to do with my life, I applied for a job as a trainee journalist. Kind of that's almost like the methadone to the heroin of writing fiction, and spent many years as a journalist of varying degrees of quality, constantly trying to get published, constantly trying to write the book that would make me the next big thing. Much rejection, much apathy, complete lack of interest. And then finally wrote a book that had some marketable appeal, got an agent. It wouldn't sell because it was, in the words of the publishing industry, brilliant but horrible. And I went away, wrote something else, came back. That wouldn't sell because it was brilliant but horrible. We changed the title, I changed agents, and I went from having no interest in me at all to having loads of different publishers, having an auction to try and publish this book that they could have had for the price of a Kit Kat a few months earlier. And it sort of went into orbit from there. And that book, which was Dark Winter, was sold hundreds of thousands of copies, international bestseller, gave me massively unrealistic expectations of what the future was going to hold, allowed me to quit the job that I hated in the manner that we all dream of. Yeah, that's been me ever since, bringing out at least one book a year, to great critical acclaim and commercial silence. So it just keeps going. I've never run out of ideas. I just keep writing. People seem to like it.
So why? Because you're obviously not a Hull native. Why set them there?
Well, the McAvoy books were set in Hull largely because it's where I was living at the time, and because Hull and East Yorkshire in particular struck me as just the perfect socio-geographic area to write about everything. It's a perfect microcosm because if you want to write about things that affect kind of an inner city estate, Hull's got that in abundance. But you walk 3 streets away and you're almost in Midsummer Murders territory, and it's very leafy and pleasant, and people are drinking prosecco with the breakfast, and it's just got the lot. And I like that idea. I like the idea of being a police officer who has to alter his approach, essentially from one street to the next, and who has to live in the community that he's policing. I find that really interesting. And Hull, for all that occasionally it's a bit of a punchline, it's never been that to me. It's always had a real grit and heart and a kind of careworn beauty about it too. And just the people are such a gift to a writer, because they express themselves with a particular type of singularity. And yeah, if you are a student of people, you can just borrow liberally from everything that you see. And I mean, I've moved away from the area now, but it's still absolutely crucial to the series as it goes forward. That that whole spirit, that East Yorkshire sense of being slightly at the edge of things, that's still very much it's still the right landscape for those books to be painted on.
I'm smiling at you because I'm married to someone from Hull. So,
oh, are you really?
Yeah.
Okay.
All those descriptions you.
Oh,
I was like, yeah.
Aren't they cheerful? Aren't they proper cheerful people? Yeah.
Well, he has his moments.
Oh, it's good to know. Yeah. Oh, they only sound like themselves when they cross. Yeah, it works perfectly. And if you want to write about people who've got real toughness about them, but who'll cry at an Andrex puppy, that's kind of the whole spirit. It's like we're tough. We'll take it. We were the most bombed city during the Second World War. We lost our main industry, but my God, we're not moving. And it's just got a real toughness about it. But there is that pride, and there is that beauty. And if you're at the very edge of the land, and looking out at this great flat wilderness, there's a bit of a Viking territory going on. It's got that kind of Scandinavian feel about it. So yeah, it's been a great gift to me, really. I mean, the tourist board don't like me, but it seems the library service does, so it's 50-50.
Andrew from Nottingham wants to know how long it takes you to write your book, starting with the sort of first draft to book on the shelf.
Oh, well, it's changed as the years have gone on. I mean, it used to be that I used to roll an idea around in my head for a few months before I set anything down on paper. And then by the time I did set it down on paper, I planned it very, very rigidly, and it was essentially a case of filling in the gaps. So from the moment of the first idea to it actually being on a bookshelf would be about 18 months. But as I've got a bit more adept at what I'm doing and had more children and therefore less time, I've really streamlined it down. So now I kind of know exactly what the beats that I need to hit to have it at the right emotional resonance at certain points. And I have some key scenes that I've got planned out perfectly in my head. But the rest of it, I kind of enjoy the flow of not knowing what I'm writing tomorrow, but knowing I've got to get this character to this point while meeting this person. And I kind of just go with that and see what comes out. And you know, 9 times out of 10, touch wood, it seems to work. So at the moment, it's under a year now, from you know, concept to having it gone through the editing phase, and then it's left alone. I mean, the books that I've got a book coming out in January that I finished 6 months ago, and it's all put to bed and everything's tidied up, and it's just going to be sitting there for the next few months. And then 6 months from now, people will ask me questions about it, and I will have no more. I'll have no more answers than the man in the street, because my brain's not there anymore. It's 3 books on. It's kind of a bizarre thing. There's an awful lot of people who take years to write a book, and I do wonder what they're doing. I do think a lot of it must be staring whimsically out the window and contemplating the beauty of the butterfly's wings and whatnot. And I think maybe they're just procrastinating and messing about, really. The family motto for us is stop faffing about. And I've tried and defaff the whole writing process to the point that I do very little of the whole gadding about that I used to, doing you know, really intense research and visiting the scenes where I was going to set it and stuff. A lot of that was just me trying to pretend I was an author, and I thought that was an authorly thing to do, when in fact the best ideas, the best passages, the best writing comes when I'm just in communion with my own imagination, really. So I sounded so pretentious there, didn't I? I should have a cravat on. I do apologise.
You sounded very awfully.
Yeah, can you imagine? If I didn't have this accent, I could probably get away with it. But it's unfortunately, I just sound like a Herbert. So.
Well, I like the accent. Ben Bruce, one of our admins and authors, says, "Where did you get that saw?"
Which one? We have many. My partner is an artist, fabulous artist. Like, takes my breath away level of talent. That's a Johnny Cash saw up there. She found that, buffed it up, and did a marvelous collage, montage, whatever you want to call it. And that's a Kill Bill katana up there. Yeah, our house is absolutely full of beautiful tat, and everything she does is marvelous. And then she gives it to me as a present, and I'm always kind of torn, because I think we could sell that and actually pay some bills. But yeah, I'm pleased you noticed it. I like it myself.
Yeah, Ben said the Cash one. He loves it. He says,
"Oh,
it's
cool!
absolutely brilliant wall art."
Oh, thank you. Well, if you look out for Nicola Jane Art on, or find her through my Facebook. She's unbelievably reasonable, which makes me sound like a pimp. So apologies for that. But yeah, she's also very talented too. So.
Lucy says, "Do you have?" Lucy Sampson's another one of our admins. She says, "Do you have some fellow authors that you can bounce around ideas with, or do you work completely in isolation?"
I don't think I'm not really a team player. I think that's been said about me. I've got lots of authors who I admire and who I'm fond of, and occasionally they prove themselves useful in terms of their life experiences, and they'll say something in conversation that I can steal. But no, in terms of, do you think this is a good idea? I don't know why I'd think they'd have any more insight than I would myself. Really, I'm only any good at one thing, and that's being a writer. So I kind of trust my own judgment and know whether or not I'm doing it right or whether I'm not. To the point that if an editor isn't keen, I feel comfortable to have that argument. So yeah, I couldn't see it myself. But saying that, I mean, I'd write a book with somebody else as long as we knew how we were going to divide it up. And the only way to divide it up really is if we put their name on it at the end and I write it. That's kind of that's the approach I think I'll take. But no, it's be nice to think that there was like a big factory just full of crime writers who were all playing ping pong and drinking dandelion and burdock and saying, "Hey, what do you think about this?" But no, it's more of me and the voices in my head in a darkened room trying to work out why a person would do this or that or the other. Although saying that, I am very grateful to His Majesty Mike Craven for giving me a lot of background information for the book that I'm writing at the moment, to be honest. But I'll wait until that comes out so you can ask me properly about that.
Fair enough. Did you know that they make alcoholic dandelion and burdock now?
Do they really? Oh,
Yeah,
God. Well, I was speaking as a sober alcoholic. That's just something that's going to have to pass me by, I'm afraid. I'm one of those people. I'm happy to talk about all of my various mental shenanigans, but yeah, alcohol was the thing that fueled the majority of my books. And also, when people ask, "How did you manage to waste so much money, David, when you were getting so much money for the first few books?" And the answer to it is alcohol. So, yeah, I think one kind of alcoholic dandelion and burdock, and this would be a very different situation.
Fair enough. Sam wants to know what it felt like when your book was picked for Richard and Judy.
Mad, completely mad. I mean, it's a very odd world where whether you rise or fall can be in the hands of Richard Madeley and Judy Finnegan. I mean, it's very, very odd, but lovely people. I mean, he's so suave, it's unreal. And she's lovely, quite nervous type, which is bizarre. But yeah, it was great. I mean, you grow up watching these people, and suddenly you're on their sofa and they're asking you questions about a book that started life in your head, and then you're walking into Smith's and you're seeing your own book looking back at you, and it's amazing. There's no two ways about it. It's amazing. I think people might have a slightly skewed view as to how much of a lottery it actually is. I think that the publishers have quite a bit of say in who they're going to pick, but nevertheless, it's an acknowledgement. It's a sticker, and it makes a difference. Let's be honest, we've got far more novelists than we need. So anything that makes you stand out from the pack and get you increases your visibility is going to be welcome. It would just be nice if they followed your career. It'd just be nice if 10 books on they got in touch with you and said, "How's it going? Whatever happened to that person who we loved so much?" But yeah, it's brilliant. The whole part of being a novelist is brilliant. If it's the thing you want to do most, if it's the thing that you believe you are for, every single aspect of it is a joy. Otherwise you're just a footballer who's moaning about the training, and I can't understand that. It's all part of it. So the fact that I wanted to be something, worked for it, and eventually became it to some degree of some acclaim for a while, that's amazing. It'll never not make me smile.
Nice. I've got more questions from Sam. She's obviously a fan. She said there's an honesty about your work that adds so much impact to your words and characters. How difficult is it to get that so right?
Oh, thanks. Well, it's bizarre. I think as I get older, I'm becoming quite aware of certain wiring in my mind that isn't entirely typical. I've never understood the need to dissemble about who you are, how you feel, and what you think. I've never understood the idea of having one public persona and one deeply entrenched set of feelings. I think I understand people And part of that's to do with being a journalist for all those years, because you see people at times of extreme high and extreme low, and all the extremes of emotion. So much of that pretense is stripped away, and you realise, you know, what people actually are underneath. And yet that can make you cynical, or it can make you compassionate. And I think I'm a healthy mix of both. I understand what it is to be human, almost with that observer's eye. So yeah, I understand. Nobody's black and white. It's everything's in these infinite shades of grey, which is probably a good title for a book, actually. And yeah, I just try and tap into that a little bit. So it's not as hard as you think, really. You just imagine how somebody would feel in those situations, and then you try and explain that to somebody who maybe hasn't felt it before. And everything's complicated. You've noticed in the past 21 minutes, I can't actually give a straightforward answer, because everything leads me on to another interesting thought, or at least it's interesting to me, and I sort of explore that until I understand it. And that's kind of what writing is as well, is that I work around somebody's mind until I feel as though I've got them, and I work out that's what they'd say, that's what they'd feel. And sometimes it's tricky, because real life doesn't actually give you that in as much as fiction has to. You know, I think there was somebody, I can't remember who it was, but somebody said that that fiction has to be credible, and reality doesn't. You know, insane things can happen in reality, and people within books have to have a character arc, and there has to be some reason why they are the way they are, and those sort of things give you an insight into psychology and how human beings interact. Whereas the people you meet in the street, it's easy to just dismiss them, and you just think, well, they're just horrible, or they're just unkind, or they're just selfish. And I'm really interested in, how did people become who they are? And within genre fiction, right, in crime fiction, the idea is that plot is key, that driving it forward and answering the question of the plot is the key part. But I don't think that's the case at all. Certainly not with my work. I think that I think character's more important than anything else, really. But yeah, well, I think anybody who sees the things that they like, I'm happy with it.
Good. My dad says hi.
Hi.
Yeah, he founded the group.
Oh, cool. Right.
Also used to sail from Hull on trawlers back in the
Oh,
day.
right. Has he got all 10 fingers?
Oh yeah, yeah.
He has. Oh, he's not a proper trawlerman then.
I don't
Right,
think he did it for long.
Okay. Oh, you basically. I remember the first time I went for a pint in the Kingston, in Hull's Trinity Square, and there was 3 old trawlermen drinking at the bar, and they had 23 fingers between them, and I just thought to myself, oh, where the hell have I moved to? But yeah, just various accidents. Each one was a story. But good. Well, hello to your father.
Jason wants to know how you came up with the name. I'm not even going to pronounce it right.
I'm sorry. I like watching you struggle. It's okay. No, it's Hector. But to be honest, Hector wouldn't object to you calling him Hector. He's fine with it. He wouldn't think to embarrass you by correcting you. But no, the idea was for McAvoy to be the ultimate outsider, even to the point that his name's difficult for people to say. I wanted, in any scenario, I wanted him to be somebody who was an outsider looking in. He's the ultimate unworldly kind of guy who's learning as we go. He's an innocent abroad, really. He's just dogged and decent and good, who finds himself in these extraordinary situations by doing the one thing that he believes he was made for, which is to follow the evidence. And he's always in these tricky situations that a man with his character would struggle with, if not for the other people in his life giving him something to believe in and something to fight for. So I just always wanted to boil that down to something that made him familiar, but just not quite. And giving him a name that was hard to say seemed a neat trick to do that. But yeah, I'm proud to say there's been a couple of Hectors born since I came up with it, because the Gaelicized version of Hector is actually Eacon, which I should have used, but I didn't like it. So I came up with Hector, which I don't think anybody else was called before I came up with it. Well, there certainly weren't many of them. But yeah, it just seemed to work, really.
Nice. There's someone else has asked if there's any news on the next Lakeland book.
Well, yes and no. I've written another one that's set in the Lakelands. I just can't work out what to do with it yet. It's a funny business that I'm in, because sometimes you write for contracts. You've got to deliver them a book by a certain time, and other times you have an idea and you decide to write it when you get a moment, and then try and work out what to do with it when you're finished. So last year I brought out a couple of Lakeland. I brought a couple of books, Still Waters and The Guest House, and I plan to self-publish them myself, but it turns out that I absolutely can't abide any of the admin side of publishing, and it's not really for me. So I've given them all to a publisher, and they've brought them out instead. So what I'm going to do with this, I have yet to decide. Suffice to say, I have to, at some point, I'm going to have to actually make some money. So it might be that I choose to do this myself again, and then see if somebody else wants it. So yeah, the answer to that question is yes. The answer is yes, you'll get to read it. The question is just whether or not it'll have spelling mistakes in it. Because if I publish it myself, chances are that it'll have times that my fingers can't keep up with my brain, and that I don't notice when I'm proofreading it. And I can't afford a copy editor, because that's how pitiful my life is. So either way, it will reach you, and thank you for your interest.
Sam wants to know if the castle in the guest house is based on a real place.
Well, for legal reasons, I would have to say, of course not. No, it's entirely fictional. But in reality, yes, of course it is. And I don't know what they're doing with it now. But when I was visiting that area, I drove past it, and I just thought to myself, "Oh, that's fabulous. That needs that could be the perfect hospital for international illegal organ transplantation." And that's the way that my mind works. And I came home and I wrote the book. Honestly, it was the most perfect from conception through to the final full stop. That whole book, The Guest House, just flowed, just came out of, just flowed out of me. I didn't even know what it was about when I started writing it, and then suddenly it was this kind of weird thriller with undercover cops, and but I meant I got to write about the parts of Scotland that I find extra beautiful. So yeah, it was great. I try and make sure that everywhere I write about is as real as possible, because I mean, I think it's a little bit arrogant to think that we've got the whole world to choose from, but we've got to come up with something that's a bit like it. I'd rather just nick it and see if anybody else minds. I mean, there's a map online somewhere of all the places in Hull and East Yorkshire that have figured in the McAvoy books, so people can go online and literally see whether or not I've put a corpse in their living room, which I quite like, actually. That pleases me tremendously.
Lots of our members genuinely really love to go to places that are in the books, or like,
oh, I can believe it. Yeah,
where they live and things like that. There is a genuine sort of desire to read stuff sort of set near you.
It's strange. I mean, it's a nice feeling. I mean, about 5 years ago, I did this. The library service and me did this thing called Dead Pretty City, and I ran a few events and whatnot as to launch the fifth McAvoy novel, and I think there's about 5 nights that I took a different group of people out to the key places in the city that had some kind of significance to the work. And yeah, it's a strange feeling. It's a lovely feeling that people are interested. But similarly, it's kind of bizarre, because I'm always just ambling about and just drinking things in, and then years later, you're trying to explain to people what you were thinking at the time, and very rarely do you come out of it looking good, because for the majority of those years, I was a journalist covering murder trials, and then getting drunk in my lunch hour, and then having mad ideas as I ambled around the old town, which does actually make for quite a colourful tour. But I can't imagine the tourist board suddenly printing up maps anytime soon.
Andrew wants to know if your partner reads your books and what she thinks of them. So this is a really good story that I hope you tell us all about.
Yes, my partner reads 90% of my books, and the ones that she doesn't get to the end of are, as far as I'm concerned, even if they sell 100,000 copies, a complete waste of my time. Because as she told me when she first emailed me as one of my readers to say that she absolutely adored my books, I was like, right, well, I need to keep that up, don't I? I need to keep providing the books that are going to make you think of me as the great writer of our age. So there's a couple that she hasn't actually read or didn't get all the way through. Probably usurped me in favour of something of slightly more worth. But I'm not bitter, not bitter at all. But yeah, she's she's my first reader, and she puts up with a lot in terms of me wittering on about storylines and do I think this work and whatnot. And then at the end of it, she just pronounces sort of a thumbs up or thumbs down, like she's sat there like Caligula, as if she's going to just suddenly turn around and say, you may live or feed this person to the lions. So, but when she says good, that means a great deal. And when she says she doesn't like it, then I have to go for a walk and talk to the trees for a while, and try and find some modicum of self worth in the ragged ashes of my soul, I guess. But I'm happy to be honest about it.
But finding such a fan must have been a good thing.
Yeah. Believe me, I really. It's lovely when people take the time and trouble to get in touch with you and say, "I love your books." That's brilliant, And in our case, it was the beginnings of a beautiful friendship, put it that way. But yeah, it's terrific, and hopefully the novelty hasn't worn off for her either. As far as I keep reminding her, you've got a baby with your favourite author. You should be walking around with a big smile on your face. But apparently, we need money as well. So you can't have everything now, can you?
I love the story that it's one of your fans that you're going to.
Yeah, well, that's authors for you, and it helps that she's an incredibly talented artist and wonderful writer herself. So yeah, it was just meant to be. I think if they ever make a movie of my life, which they won't, but if they did, it would be a significant. It would be one of those stories that would make people smile. I hope it would. Anyway, it makes me smile when I think about it. Anyway.
So Sam says, what other projects are you working on currently?
Well, I am never short of things on the go. I don't really sleep or stop very much. I'm like, sharks, if they stop swimming, they'll die. That might be one of those QI facts where the klaxon goes off, but I know it's in my head, so I will use it as an analogy. But I'm busy writing the sequel to a book I had out about 3 years ago called The Mausoleum, which was repackaged as The Burying Ground, and was one of those books that was critically very successful and very few people read. But those who did read seemed to really connect with it. So there's a sequel to that coming out. I'm just busy writing that. And then I have my long-awaited, eagerly anticipated, terrifying mental health memoir, which I have just finally finished, finally reached the state of emotional maturity to be able to write. And that'll be out in a couple of months, I think. It'll be a exploration of living with various conditions that affect an awful lot of people, but it'll be basically looking at the world through the filter of all these various problems that I've had, and how it feels to be somebody who's not quite wired right, and seems to have done okay despite that. So yeah, that'll be that's kind of the project I've put off for the past 10 years, but that'll be out in a couple of months' time. I might have to crowdsource that one to get it into enough heads and hands, because my fiction can kind of rise or fall, and it's nothing to do with me. It's whether or not the publisher's put enough money into it, or whether Tesco are going to take a punt. But with this, I think it might actually help people. So I'd like to get it out there as much as possible. So so stay tuned, folks. You might be able to get this mind into the impressionable brains of other people, which has to be a good thing, doesn't it?
Definitely. Well, let us know when it comes out, and we'll share links.
Yeah. Oh, cheers. It's a strange old business because the people who work in fiction don't know anything about non-fiction. Like there's complete and utter crossover. So nothing that I've learned as a fiction writer has served me at all for the preparation for bringing out something that's non-fiction. But then I was a journalist for 15 years before I was a novelist, so I kind of understand what the journalists of old would be looking for from a story, and how to best explain what your book is about for people who might not want to read the whole thing, but just want to know whether or not it's something worth buying. So it's tricky. I don't want to be off-putting because it's actually quite a funny read as well. But it is, in the words of the couple of dozen people who've read the advanced copies of it, it is excruciatingly honest. So do with that as you will. But suffice to say, it explores depression, suicide, alcoholism, obsessive compulsive disorder, hallucinations, and it's incredibly funny in places too. So hopefully it'll be of worth. We'll see, or it might sink without trace. We just don't know.
It sounds intriguing.
I'll have that. Intriguing is a word I can work with.
One of Sam's favourite questions, and she's not actually texted me it today for you, is what's the most recent scene that you've written without giving away spoilers?
Most recent theme?
Scene.
Scene.
Yeah.
The most. Wow. Okay. Right. The scene I've written today was it's the sequel to The Burying Ground. It's all set in the little village of Gilsland on the Roman wall, border country, and essentially I've just written the one before the climactic scene. So it's kind of the setup, and I have a mum hiding in the rafters above this room, trying desperately not to make a noise, because the people who've put her where she is are having their big discussion at the end where they all explain the plot, basically. And then the ceiling gives way and she crashes through. And it's all very exciting and chaotic. And yeah, it was one of those things. It was one of those movie moments that are the great parts of writing, where woe betide any poor Amazon delivery driver who comes to the door during those moments. As far as I'm concerned, the dog can savage him because I'm busy in my own head. This person's life is at stake. God damn it! I haven't got time to answer the door and sign the packages. So yeah, that's exactly what I've been up to today.
Andrew wants to know what the chances are of McAvoy being on TV.
Okay, I'll give you a serious answer. There is still a half decent chance. I mean, it's nearly 10 years since the first McAvoy book came out, and that was bought instantly by a TV company with a plan to turn it into the new big Sunday night thing on ITV. And it didn't happen, and I'm kind of grateful it didn't, because I didn't really like what they planned with it. And I know enough other authors who've had their stuff made for TV and who hate what was done to it, and it wasn't worth the fuss. And since then, I think it's been 4 times now. It's been optioned by different companies, and nothing's ever really happened. The last time it was optioned, I thought something really was going to happen, but then it seemed to go off the boil as well. And now I'm sort of working on a gentleman's handshake with a playwright friend of mine who has some contacts and really would like to do something with it. And he's the guy who put it on at Hull Truck Theatre as a play, which went down very well. I can't work out for the life of me why it hasn't been staged again since, because it was hugely popular. So yeah, there's still a chance. It doesn't really bother me that one way or another. There's a couple of books that I'd like to, that aren't McAvoy that I'd like to see made into films because I think they've got a cinematic feel. But I just think the books work. The books are popular. If people want to see how I imagine them, they can read the books. But similarly, if somebody wants to is inspired enough to make a TV program out of them, and that leads to an upsurge in my sales, that's no bad thing. So we shall see. But it's not something that I get. I get a far bigger kick seeing somebody sat on the train reading one of my books than I would sat on the sofa seeing, inspired by the books by David Mark come on the screen. I think I don't. That doesn't really. That's not what I'm in it for. But yeah, but if you happen to run a TV production company, you want to give me some money, please, I'll happily take it.
Which of your books would you like to see adapted?
Well, I wrote a book a couple of years ago now. It's called Suspicious Minds, and it's set in this incredibly bleak little pocket of the Allendale Valleys, quite near Hexham, which is quite near where I live. And that had a kind of independent cinema, slightly Scandinavian noir kind of feel about it. And I always thought that would make a good film. I think it would be an interesting way to explore the subject that's at its heart, which is intense paranoia. But it's that whole thing about, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you. And I thought that's quite a cinematic one. But I don't think I don't think anybody is currently thinking of it in those terms. But because I do not lack ambition, and I have no sense of my own limitations, I keep thinking to myself, well, maybe I'll do it myself. I'll just get an iPhone and some drama students, and the next thing I'll be at the Cannes Film Festival being lauded as the great filmmaker of my age. So we shall see. If you've got a good imagination, you can conceive of almost anything. So therefore, anything remains possible up until the moment that somebody says no, it's not going to happen. And even then, I think to myself, well, what do you know? So yeah, if you want to make that happen, just write to TV producers and threaten to hurt them if they don't do it.
It's one way of getting it done.
Yeah,
this is
the only way.
This is straight from Sam. She says, "Have you been forgiven for trying to explore a dark building at night yet?"
The amount of dark buildings that I have explored at night. Yeah, before I was a bit, I won't go as far as to say that I'm sensible, but before I calmed down a bit and I was constantly looking for dopamine hits and doing things that probably weren't the best of ideas. Yeah, I was forever breaking into like old abandoned buildings and climbing under the security netting with a torch to go make sure that this scene I was working on in my head was going to be absolutely perfect. And yeah, my one of my daughters, who was my little adventure buddy, she enjoyed all that up until she got to the age where she realised that probably Daddy wasn't a particularly responsible human being. So yeah, the amount of time that we spent hiding from security guards in darkened buildings down at St Andrew's Docks and whatnot. Yeah, hopefully they'll be good memories for her. They are for me. But yeah, I don't understand things like ownership, as far as I'm concerned. I have a lot of these arguments with the with the kind of people who wear green wellies and +4s and who shout at me when I walk on their land. And I'm always like, this ownership thing that you're talking about, come on, talk me through it from the beginning. So yeah, spot the liberal. As far as I'm concerned, if it's there, it's meant to be explored.
There's a lot of like urban exploration YouTubers now. Maybe you were just ahead of your time.
I think so, yeah. And the thing is that they do stuff that's to do with seeing how high they can get or how far deep into the building. I was never into that. I like the experience. I like the idea of being sat alone with your imagination in the dark and trying to work out how that feels. And now I just imagine it. But big parts of my life have been spent trying to see, I wonder how that would feel. Because why, you know, if you'd bump into me at some point in life and I'd be just the creepy guy stood in the woods in the dark, and I'm not trying to scare you, I just haven't noticed that you're there as well. So I thought, well, I'd best hide. And it's because I'm trying to experience that feeling. And yeah, I mean, those, you can read about these kind of things in the mental health memoir when it comes out. But suffice to say, I was on a journey of exploration, whereas now I'm just a bit more sanguine about the whole affair.
So one of my favourite author chat questions to ask is, would you make a graphic novel of one of your books?
Absolutely. I think graphic novels are hugely underrated, to be honest. I think that it's an incredible, the level of versatility within that is huge. So yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you can't really make it happen. It has to be sort of serendipitous. So if there was a graphic artist who really wanted to do something from one of my books, or if who wanted a new idea or want to work in collaboration, I'd say yes in a flash. But most people I know in the business in publishing are other writers who. So yeah, the opportunity hasn't been there. But hey, I'm open to anything. If somebody wanted to collaborate with me on a puppet show, I would do it. I like creative endeavor. I like the challenges to my imagination. I like looking at new mediums and seeing if I can tell a story in a different and slightly more beguiling way. So yeah, I'd totally do that. I would do it myself, but I can't draw.
Also from Sam, and one of her favourite questions is, what's the best place you've seen someone holding one of your books?
Well, actually, there's the daughter of a friend of mine sent out a reel on Instagram the other day of herself reading one of my books while in the bath, and she's quite an easy on the eyes young lady. So that's definitely on the list. But it's nice when people are having a wonderful time on holiday and send you pictures of your book having a better time than you are. So it's relaxing by the pool, or it's being used as a coaster under somebody's pint of San Miguel. But yeah, I've seen one of my books on a table at an empty seat on the train as I've walked past. But the person who was there had obviously gone to the loo, I've literally no idea who it was who was reading my book. But it was quite strange as I'm coming back from the buffet car, and you just see one of your own books staring back at you. But yeah, thankfully, I've seen them quite a few places. You know, back in the
walk past someone on the empty table and just sign it, write a little message in.
Well, you know, cinematically that would be a wonderful moment. But I also, the cynic in me knows that they'd come back, see this half-wit scrawling in their book, and then you'd have to have the conversation where you're comparing your author photo to your own face and trying to say, no, look, I'm not. I know I'm a twat, but I'm this twat. And yeah, best to just keep on going as far as I'm concerned. Have that quiet moment of just, oh, that was nice.
Lucy said that she would love to read your memoir. You've really sold yourself to her.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, this isn't a role model, believe me. But yeah, I'm, you know me. I've used humor as a defense mechanism most of my life, as to keep people from getting too close. But I kind of reached the stage where I think being able to look out through somebody else's eyes is what readers are really looking for, and I can do it with great authenticity with my fiction. But I've sort of lacked the moral fortitude to actually say, look, this is me, and this is how I think, and this is how I feel, and this is what I've done as a consequence, or despite it. So yeah, it was kind of, the time felt right. So yeah, well, I won't say I hope you enjoy it, because I don't think it's a book to be enjoyed, but similarly, it's not a book to be endured. I think it's to be experienced. So yeah, I wish I had a link now I could send you so you could pre-order it, because that does actually sound quite good. But yeah, keep posted. I'll let you know when you can read it.
honestly, spending this amount of time in your company does make you want to go off and start reading everything you've written.
Well, I'm reliably informed by those. Those who know and love me best will say that this is the right amount of time to spend in my company.
So other authors that you enjoy, do you read a lot of crime?
I read a lot. If I'll be honest, I don't read a lot of crime anymore. Before I was published, I used to read almost nothing but crime. But it's not essentially that I read it that I like it any less. It's just I don't know. I'm sort of a little bit scared of absorbing other people's plots or characters or structures. And also, I'm kind of, if they're writing that book, then there's sort of nothing for me to take from it that might inform my own work. But if I read slightly more literary novels, there might be areas in there that spark an idea, or there's a theme that I want to explore that I can then, absorb and turn into something fresh and new. So I tend to read a bit more so-called literary fiction, which makes people do that, which is obviously dreadful. But yeah, I read. I read a lot of fairly serious books as well. I read quite a lot of factual things, but I never stop really. I'm either reading or writing or talking about reading and writing. But there are obviously there's the people in the crime fiction world who I hugely admire and who I read everything they bring out. And then there's things that I read for comfort, and then sometimes I just like those kind of charity shop discoveries where you almost just pluck something at random and find yourself absolutely energized and absorbed, and you think to yourself, oh, I almost don't want to share this with other people because this was my discovery, it was so good, but then you want to say you'll enjoy this too. I love the communal sense of being a reading fan. I love the thing of gifting a book. I love having those books that you'd almost want to buy 20 copies of. So the people that you like best, you can say, you've got to read this. It's amazing. And then there's other ones where you think to yourself, no, I'm not going to lend this. This is too important to me. I'm going to hold it myself. So yeah, that is a very long-winded way of saying that I read wide and constantly. And you're going to ask me now what I'm reading at present, and my brain is going to completely empty like the doors of a trawler. I just finished an absolute. Oh, I'm reading the Cambridge Six by Charlie Cumming because it popped up on my Kindle and I read the opener and I was hooked and that was great. But I also just finished Sarah Moss's new one. I've got about 3 or 4 books that have arrived from publishers over the past week. They're waiting to be read. And I just finished Snow by John Banville, which is mesmerizing, brilliant, wonderful, superb, irritatingly good. So I definitely heartily recommend that as well.
I just finished Grim Up North by Dave Gatwood.
Okay. Would you recommend it?
Yeah, it's all right.
That's not a recommendation. If I got it's all right, I would not feel that was a recommendation.
Oh no. Yeah, no, it's pretty good. He's got a good sense of humor. If you like a sense of humor in your fiction,
yeah,
then he's got a good sense of humor. It's set in Wensleydale and it's got a lot of very Yorkshire stereotypes.
Okay. So it's sort of like a character piece, is it? Right.
Yeah.
I might give it a go. The thing is, I feel like life is too short to attempt a book that doesn't grab you. These people who persevere with a book that they don't like, and these are probably your members actually. So I'm going to alienate people who briefly liked me, but there's people who stop reading to ask other people, should I carry on reading this book? Does it get better? I'm like, you know the answer to this question. You're not enjoying it. You've stopped to go on Facebook. Stop it. Read something else. You don't know if you get to page 88 and it hasn't, and you're not desperate to know what happens on page 89. Just throw it away. Don't go back to it. It's our job as writers to engage with you, and if you don't engage, don't read it.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
I don't
I,
get
I do like it though when they're asking about something that's done incredibly well. When you've got people saying this Richard Osman book, does it get any better? And I'm sat there thinking, well, he's sold like about 3 million copies of that, so he's probably not going to be really upset if you don't stick with it. But there is something that of that slight Schadenfreude when you think to yourself, yeah, you should definitely bin that and read something of mine. Definitely.
You should be popping in on the comments saying that.
Yeah, it's crucial. Just give up.
So another one of our group's favourite questions is, what are your memorable moments as an author?
Oh God. Well, the first really significant moment was I was on the New Blood panel at the Harrogate Crime Festival in 2011, I think it was, which basically every year Val McDermott, Her Majesty, picks out 4 debut authors and says, these are the ones to watch. And that year was my first novel, and she picked me, picked Dark Winter to be on the New Blood panel, which really made a major difference to my career. So yeah, being up on stage as a fan of that genre with one of my heroes, answering questions about my work in front of 600 people, that was surreal and wonderful, and I'm pleased that I was almost totally sober for it, so I can remember it properly. It was that was a good feeling. It really was a good feeling. And I tell you what, as well, the feeling of an audience wanting you to do well is a really lovely thing. It's like a really collegiate atmosphere because they know what it means to you to be up there. And so the first time I cracked a joke and I got this wall of laughter coming back at me, it was just the best feeling. It really was. And then I went afterwards to go and sign books in the little Waterstones outside, and the manager started apologising to me because they'd run out of my book, and he came out with this wonderfully backhanded compliment, which was, "We hadn't expected you to be popular," which I think says it all, really. But yeah, that was kind of set the tone for everything that's come since. But I mean, just the most surreal moment as an author was about 5 years ago. I had to go through I was asked to go to Spain to talk to some journalists about my first Spanish release. And nobody spoke English, and why should they? They're Spanish. So I had a translator, and I was in the hottest room in the world, as far as I could tell. And there was like 30 journalists, one after the other. It was like that Hugh Grant moment in Notting Hill. They just kept coming in and asking me questions, like really deep political questions through an interpreter, one after the other. And yeah, that was one of those really surreal moments. And then that evening, apparently I'd been so popular with this guy I'd spoken to, I ended up on their version of Newsnight on the radio, answering questions about the Spanish economic crisis. And to tell you what, that is a bowel loosening moment when you find you talk about out of your depth. There is really all I can just put it down to hubris and free whiskey. But I think it went okay. If not, I'm probably on like their version of You've Been Framed or something as just this gibbering Englishman. But yeah, that was kind of funny.
I don't know if I could do that.
Just go with it. Just go with it. Sorry, say that again.
I said it sounds terrifying.
Yeah. But and again, I don't want to go too deep because we're having a nice chat. But if literally everything terrifies you, everything, then you can't distinguish. So therefore, there's no need to be afraid, and therefore you do everything. So I don't say no. I don't let anything bother me the way that it might have done. So yeah, people ask me to do something, I say yes. If something scares me, I do it twice as hard. So that's kind of the way I've lived my life, really, which works for me, but doesn't necessarily work for everybody else, because it means that I can be a little bit lacking in sympathy for people's reluctance to throw themselves at life. So that's kind of been part of my journey of self-exploration, is to, just because I've fought every fear I've ever had doesn't mean that everybody else could or should or should be encouraged to do so. So that's probably a theme that I'll approach in a work of fiction, so I can disguise myself. But it's just either be scared of everything or be scared of nothing. I think it's those choices.
And with that, we are at the end of our time.
Well, yes, tune in again for cult lessons with David Mark. Yeah.
Well, finish us off with a recap of you and your books.
Yes, I am and continue to be journalist turned best-selling novelist David Mark. I write dark, grimy, slightly sordid psychological fiction, which has done shockingly well, and which is absolutely my passion. I'm never short of ideas. I never ever get blasé about being a novelist, and I really think you should read them because it legitimizes this personality. Once you've read me, you will forgive all of this shambolic catastrophe. It's the only way that this makes sense is through the sphere of success within the publishing world. So it's up to you. Otherwise, I'm just this twat.
And on that bombshell, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you for an hour.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us.